watching NotesIn9.
Hello, and welcome to NotesIn9. I'm David Leedy. Episode 172, XPages Java Debugging. Yes, Eric, your show's coming next. Calm down. I saw you mouth off on Twitter, and Marky, don't get me even started on you. Eric's show is coming. Okay, we have got a great returning guest today in a new format we're going to talk about. But I like to call him the professor because he's highly educated in the wonderful language of Latin and Greek mythology and probably Greek real things and all that kind of stuff. So that's none other than, of course, than Paul Withers from Intech Systems. His website's at intech.co.uk, and there's a link to his blog, and his blog's from there. He also has a site, jasonmedea.net, and he is a longtime IBM champion, regular speaker at Notes events, and he's an OpenNTF contributor, a great OpenNTF contributor with different projects, and I believe he's on the board of OpenNTF currently, and he does a lot of XPages expertise and mentoring. So if you do have needs for or you need XPages help, he's a good guy to go to. He even wrote a book on it on the XPages extension library, I believe it was. So again, he's kind of an expert, and that's why he's on the show. Today we're going to do something a little different. I've been meaning to do this for quite a while, and this seemed like a good enough time to try as any. Is I recorded this demo with Paul as part of a Gotomeeting. So we're actually going to have two voices during the demo, which historically we've only done one, which allowed me to ask some questions because I don't know half of what he's talking about, and I thought it made sense there. And I've been trying to do this for a while as a way to maybe entice people. So if you're nervous about presenting on NotesIn9, but you'd like to, maybe we could do something with a shared Gotomeeting, and you can work on a topic, and we can kind of go through it together, so you're not just out there all on your own. So if that helps entice you to contribute to NotesIn9, please drop me a line. I'd be interested to talk to you. So we're going to talk about Java debugging today and turning on the debugger, and it's a really neat thing, and quite honestly, I've never done it. I want to do it. I need to do it, but I still use print statements. Declan did not hear that. But one thing that I do know is you do not want to try this on a production server, because what you have to do is you have to set your server up to like basically listen for a connection to come in, and it's probably not something you want to just put out there on the internet. Another thing is like I said, I've never done this. I need to do this, but I think the first time or so through, you might want to practice, and you don't want to basically be in the middle of a problem and say, oh, I really should use the Java debugger. So when you don't have a problem, play with it, get comfortable with it, start to use it, and then when you do have a problem and you actually need it, now you've got the skills on how to use it. That's probably the best way to do it. A couple other OpenNTF projects I do want to mention is OpenLog. Paul's going to talk a little bit about OpenLog in the beginning and at the end of this show, I believe it is. I might want to do some more on OpenLog just itself, because I think that's important. Another great project is XPages Log Reader, which you can download and put on your server, and that gives you pretty good access to different logs that you might be locked out of, like the console and stuff. But there's ways to kind of like just see that information just via the application. So that's very handy. And of course, Mark Lusink's I think his name's spelled right there. Debug project, which is on OpenNTF or so, which is highly popular and highly useful. Okay, so with all that being said, we're going to go to the demo and talk to Paul as he shows us a little about OpenLog and how to set up and use the Java debugger to debug your XPages Java-based code, not your agent code, but your XPages Java code on the server. Okay, so what's going to happen now is Paul's going to give us a little demo on a couple things. One is how to use OpenLog from XPages Java. OpenLog is the great project that Julian Robichaux wrote a long time ago that a lot of us have used for Lotus Script, and Paul has created this new project that basically extends it to the XPages world. And Paul will correct me if I make any mistakes in describing it. And he's also going to kind of show us how to do some debugging action in the Java world, which is something that I'm not too familiar with. I still use print statements. Like everybody else on my team still uses print statements, and that's probably a bad thing at this stage in our lives. So, Paul, what are we looking at here?
Yep, so I've got the OpenLog demo database. So this is XPages OpenLog logger from OpenNTF. It started off as just a bunch of Java files that were in the XPages help application. I then kind of extended it because I found out how you could pick up XSP properties. So instead of pointing to the base openlog.nsf or hard coding it in your database in the code, you can actually point to an XSP property in the application. So I packaged up all of those kind of things, wanted a good demo database to show all the examples of that and to test it all. And I also then picked that up and put it into an OSGI plugin, which we'll come back to later. So what we're looking at here is that demo database. So we've got a page here that causes an error when you click a button, and that's all you see. And we've had this, I'm sure that most people have had this, where it hits an error and redirects to your default error page. How do you actually get the message? Well, this is one of the things that the XPages OpenLog logger does for you. It intercepts it, intercepts the loading of that error page, and prints out the OpenLog even from a server-side JavaScript, and gives exactly where that error is occurring to help you track those problems straight away. So I'll just switch over to Designer here. So we want to debug that and just see what's happening. So let me just go back to that page and refresh it. I think since 8.5, Java debugging has been available. With 9, I think it was, we got server-side JavaScript debugging. To be honest, I don't know a great deal about that because by the time that was available, I'd already moved into Java because it wasn't available. So I'm going to cover the Java debugging. So you've got this little bug icon, and I've got my debug configuration set up already. Initially, you won't have any debug configuration set up, so you click on Debug Configurations, and there'll be nothing under this remote Java application. You're debugging a remote Java application. That means you're debugging a Java application, because that's what an XPages application is, that is remote. So it's not running native to the browser or native to Domino Designer. So
it's a remote server is what it is, right?
Yes.
And so it has to make a connection to the remote server.
Yep. So the first thing that's needed for that is some settings to add to the NotesIn9. Fortunately, the Domino Designer JavaScript debugging tab. Let me just get rid of that one which I've accidentally created. So when you create a server-side JavaScript debug configuration, it gives you these lines here, which are the ones you need to copy and paste into your server's NotesIn9. Because we're debugging on the server, we need to tell the server to listen out for a debugger connecting. So that's what we're doing here. We're telling it to enable Java debug, enable JavaScript debug, obviously, if you're enabling JavaScript debug on a server, you're going to be debugging server-side JavaScript, not client-side. And then we tell it the options. So it's saying that it is a server, don't stop the server, and start listening on port 8000. So it's important that the server has port 8000 available for listening. So just copy that, and I've already got it pasted into my NotesIn9, and save the NotesIn9 and restart the HTTP task.
And again, this is the NotesIn9 for the Domino server, not the Notes client. You just happen to have
Correct.
a Domino server on your machine right here, ready to go.
Yes, yeah. Now, really, you want to be doing your debugging against a Domino server that you're the only person dealing with, because only one client can be connected. Only one debugging client can be connected at any one time. So if you're trying to debug against a server that your whole team works on, then only one person can be debugging at any one time. Also, if any breakpoint in any XPage in any application is hit, it will kick the person who is debugging at that time over into the debug perspective. So again, it's very easy to leave debug breakpoints sitting in an application accidentally. So you want to be debugging what you actually want to be debugging. So you don't want to be sharing that server really with someone else. So it's if you're debugging against the server, then you really want to be running a local server. And when we come across to Eclipse later and building plugins, again, you want to be deploying those plugins to a local server, really for testing, because we'll show actually testing, picking the plugin up live from Eclipse and debugging it sitting in your Eclipse rather than loading it into an update site database. And if you're picking up all your plugins from one person's from your own Eclipse client, if your PC is switched off, then no one else can use any of those plugins. So it's going to break everyone else's applications. So there are just so many reasons, really, why I think as a developer you want to be developing against a locally running Domino server. So once you've got those settings in the NotesIn9 and restarted HTTP, then you're ready to set up the remote Java application configuration. So I've got one already set up against my my server, but you just click on the new button, give it a name, tell it where the server is. So it can be so it's a locally running server, so I've got it called localhost, and that's it. So here I've got one for a remote server. It's just got the server name. That's all that's needed for it. And not sure why that one's been sitting there. Let's get rid of that one. And again, here's the one for my actual locally running server. Once that's set up, then to start debugging, you either click Debug, or more often than not, you'll go up to the Debug icon, select the server, and it will start debugging. How do you know? Well, easiest way is in the debug perspective, then you see that it's connected here. Let me just switch back. If someone else is connected, or you try and do it a second time, then it says server connection failed. So either someone else is connected, you're already connected for debugging, or port 8000 isn't available. So I'm connected. So I'm going to come across to Package Explorer and open up this Java class, and I'll just click here to add a breakpoint. It's the normal kind of round breakpoint. It's got a tick next to it because debugging is enabled at the moment. So it's saying, yes, that's going to get picked up. Double click it again to remove it. It's as simple as that, really. So now, the other important thing is that when you then go across to your browser, make sure that your focus is left on Designer rather than the Notes client, because they're shared. So the debug perspective will start up in whichever one last had focus, and you have less options available in the Notes client. So just make sure that you've got Designer selected. If not, then it'll just open up. You just click continue to let it run through, and close down that debug perspective, come across to Designer, click there, and then start debugging again. Right, so I'm connected up. I've got my breakpoint that's going to get hit. So I'll click the button, and we're jumped across to the debug perspective. Now, the first time you try to debug an application, if it's an application that you haven't tried to debug before, then you get this blank page and it looks absolutely terrifying. All it means is it doesn't know where to find the source code. Designer knows where the source code is, but the debug configuration doesn't. So we just click on Edit Source Lookup Path, and select. It's not in the list that's currently there. So we click Add and Java Project, and it gives you a list of all the NSFs that are open in Designer. You just select it, OK, and OK, and everything continues as normal. That will only happen the first time that you try to debug against that NSF. Every time after that, it'll just go straight here. So let's just step through what's available here. The Debug View up here, this is where you resume, so continue through until it hits the next breakpoint. Step into, so that will step into any dependent Java classes or methods. Step over, same as in LotusScript debugger, it steps, it runs that line and goes onto the next line in that class. Step return is the same as step exit in the Lotus script debugger. It continues through the rest of that class or that method, and then stops again on the line that called that class or method. And then there are step filters, and I don't know what drop to frame and step filters are. I don't really use them a great deal. I think the step filters allow you to do step into but skip certain classes. For example, all of the lotus.domino or com.ibm.xsp that may not be available. Then over on the right here we've got variables. So these are the variables that are available there, and all of their properties. Bear in mind that in the Lotus script debugger, if you've got a notes document there and open it up, then you've got the items property that you can expand up to see all of the fields. Obviously, there isn't in Java, there isn't an items property. There's a getItems method, so you can't expand that up open to see all of the fields, because those fields aren't properties of the document class. They're accessible via a method call with getItemValue, for example. Breakpoints, there we've got all the various breakpoints that are enabled in here. The middle section here is basically just what you see in Designer. So that's just got the outline of the class and the code itself. And at the bottom here, you've got console and tasks. There's another one that you want to add in there, and that is display. This allows you to actually run code on the fly, and that needs to be a return value. So this is where you can actually do that doc.getItemValue string to find out what values are. So for example, here I can do return, because I want to print out a value, event.getPhaseID dot let's try to string. So you see you get all of any object that's selected there, then you get all the methods and properties that are available with type ahead. You just select all of that code and click on the display result of evaluating selected text. And so we can see that it's in the restore view phase, the first phase of the 6 that run in a life cycle. You can also hover on variables here and see the properties, and again kind of drill down. So there's lots of flexibility here.
And this works for any of your custom objects too, right? So if you make a class for your business object, not necessarily a Domino object, then you can inspect that just as easily, correct?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So no more print statements.
Would a print statement show up in this console here? The print statement that would normally go to the Domino Server console, would it also show up here?
I'm not sure. I haven't tried that.
And I ask that because I have a lot of print statements in my code that I get yelled at for polluting the console all the time.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it still prints to the server, because the code's still running over on the server. I think because, bearing in mind that this is all built upon Eclipse, and in Eclipse you often have a web server running and installed within Eclipse, I think that console area is for a web server that's part of the Eclipse client.
Okay, so you don't typically use this console tab, it sounds like.
Not for Domino
Okay.
work, no. The other extremely useful thing is you can set breakpoint properties, so you can enable a condition and then write code so that it only stops on that breakpoint if it matches that particular condition. So if the document's note ID is 451AE, for example,
Or if a field is empty and you don't know which field it is or so because you're getting a null or so.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think you can also, no, I think there's somewhere that you can tell it to, does it allow, no, I think there's somewhere that you can tell it to break on, add a Java exception breakpoints. So this means if there are particular exceptions, exception types, then break. The other important point is that as it's stepping through this code, then it's running them, and you can see each of the relevant steps that it's running, and you can rerun that code. So it's now in process validations. And now it's in render response, so it's going through that. If you've got a try catch block and it jumps into the catch bit, then of course all of these variables here are in your try block, not in your catch block. So they're no longer available. You can't see what the properties are.
Because it's a different scope, basically, in the try catch,
exactly. Right? Exactly. So it's important to kind of keep checking those objects before it hits the catch block. So we'll run through this and we'll see that it does absolutely nothing there. And yet it comes across to this error page. So it's obviously not something in the before phase that's triggering the problem. So let's add the breakpoint here and just run that again. So actually let's just move the breakpoint a bit further down so that it's not going to hit so much. So now we're seeing that, and again there's no error there. Okay, that wasn't quite what I was expecting.
Did you kick off the browser again? I didn't notice that.
Yes, well spotted. It didn't hit an error because there wasn't an error to hit there. Yes. So now when I click this fails. Again, we're now in render response, but now request scope.get error. We've got there it is. Request scope.get error. We've got a javax.faces.faces exception with all sorts of very helpful code there.
Gobbledygook, I like to call it.
Yes, yeah. And so then it allows us to step into this process exceptions, and there we see that javax.faces.faces faces exception option, we pick up all of the relevant objects, and it's not a method not found exception. It's this evaluation exception EX. So let's just print that fe.getCalls. And when I say print, I'm kind of saying print to this display area. So there we see that error while executing JavaScript action expression, which we've all seen and not been able to then see exactly what the details were. But now, if we look at EE, which is now that fe.getCalls, if we look at kind of get error text, for example, there we see the text that's trying to be run. Get localized message is going to be the actual error message that we saw there.
And this code you're stepping through right now, this is part of your OpenLog project, debugging, right?
Yes.
That you're looking through. So if someone isn't using this and they just want to use the debugger and they step through their code, they're just going to be looking at their code that they're because your code looks very advanced here, quite honestly. Because it's all this error handling stuff that you've got built into it. But if me and my kind of like level 1 code is I'm stepping through this, I'm going to see my code and my objects, and I'll be able to do this display and kind of see where it goes there, right?
Yeah, and as a good example, I had some code that wasn't running how I expected it to just this afternoon, stepped through it in debug, and I realized that my if statements that I've been looking at and reading as doing exactly what I wanted it to do, I'd got a not in front of it, which meant that it was skipping over that.
You negated it, okay.
Yeah. So that's something that I just wouldn't have. I'd have been banging my head against for ages, but with the debugger, it showed me it straight away and kind of pointed out that it's Friday afternoon, it's time to go home.
That's right, and the debugger will work great for that. Now, 3 print statements, one before, one in each, if-then, that would help too or so, but the debugger is the more efficient way to get into that, I would say.
It's going to keep your admin happier.
Yes, because unless you're like me and you leave the print statements in and then you promote it and then Declan says in an Irish accent, what's up with that? And then I feel shame.
Yes, yeah. So here we can also get the error component ID, and we can see that it's on button 1, so it allows you to immediately kind of find that particular component and fix the problem.
Cool.
So that's and at the end that when you finish, then you just disconnect.
And what if you forget to disconnect?
You'll know because your designer client will switch over to the debug perspective next time a breakpoint's hit.
Or an error hits. Or must it be at a breakpoint, or will an actual error kick you off into the debug?
If you've got a breakpoint set up for a particular Java exception and that exception hits, then it will kick it up.
Okay, so unlike the Lotus script debugger, where if it dies, then or you go. I guess you just go through it manually to begin with. So in this world, you must really you want to set a breakpoint before you kick off the page that you're testing against. Is that right?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. It won't stop on. It won't come up to life on the first line of Java.
Okay, unless you said so. If you wanted to emulate the Lotus script, feel to it, you set the breakpoint on the first line you can, and then you just start stepping through after that fact. Is that?
But bear in mind that all of your XPages and custom controls are Java. So if it were to kick in on the first line of Java and make you step through every line of Java, then you just yeah. That's really the Java debugger. It's extremely useful. One other thing, to keep that display panel there, if you just go to Save Perspective As and just override it, then the debug view will sit there then. Periodically it gets lost and you just need to add it back in again, but it should then be there the next time that you fire up the designer client.
And then I guess I'll add, and I hope as a good podcaster I've mentioned this already, but just in case I forget when I go to do the slides, is you do not want to turn the debugger on your production server, because you've got this connection there, and that's now a security problem, because someone else could connect to it and possibly ruin your day, a la Sony.
It's not just that. It can also be that the other big reason is that you've got users running the application, and whilst it's when it hits this breakpoint, if I just run this again, I'll just need to connect up. It hits that breakpoint. If you've gone out to lunch, that's still sitting there, timing out, and no one can do anything on the application, or that user can't do anything.
Oh, because it thinks it's sitting on a designer. I mean, so even if you weren't connected, then it's going to sit on that debug statement until someone connects.
No, if you're connected, it will. If no one's connected, then it just continues.
But again, it's a ticking time bomb that you don't want there on your production server.
Yep.
Don't let this happen to you. Don't mess with your users on the production server. Okay, cool. Well, that's a great demo, I think, on the debug statement. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Just OpenLog itself, on how to, maybe I guess hook into it from your applications to generate these logs, or is there how do you apply that to your methods?
There's two options really. Either copying the code into your NSF, and it's this com.pullwithers.openlog Java class, and then some code into the faces config that tells it to register that phase listener and register a managed bean for the OpenLog bean stuff. Then in your code, if you're using it from server-side JavaScript, then it's just a case of adding your try-catch block, and no, that's one that hasn't got an error.
That one the bomb says using from server-side JavaScript.
I think that might just be the description page. Yep. Okay. Error method. This should have it. Nope. Thrown error. That's, I think, the one. Yes. Yeah. So you have your try catch, and then do openlogbean.addError e comma this. So E is the error object. This is referring to then the component. You can again do this from an event handler, so from a button. You still just need to do this, and the OpenLog code will navigate up and get the relevant component.
What is this? Oh, this would be the button in this case?
Well, this in the event handler will be the event handler. It's whatever's kind of prefixed by XP colon or XE colon or whatever.
And this return true then so if I put this try catcher on all my server-side JavaScript code, I'm going to get a log in my OpenLog database itself, which we'll talk about that in just a second on the path and stuff like that. But then does it stop the user, and does it give them the stack trace so they know something died, or what does that return true do?
I'm not sure. I can't remember why I put the return true in there, but it will print to your errors block.
Okay.
So it will give the information there in the errors block. On the home page of the demo database, there's all the options that you can set to suppress that error being displayed to the user, add in a generic error message, for example. So there's all of that. The other real benefit of this is that, as we saw with stepping through it, when a partial refresh, it runs through a number of phases and calculates the code on a number of phases. So before I had this available, if you put a print statement in there or something like that, then you would get that printed out multiple times.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. With the XPages OpenLog logger stuff, you'll only get one error log.
Oh, that's cool.
Out.
That's nice.
Because it's I'm storing this OpenLog bean is it's being stored in a tree map, which basically only allows unique entries. So if it's the same message, if it's the same message for the same component multiple times, it's only going to print out for the first phase that it hits. Doing it from Java, then you don't go through the bother of using the OpenLog bean. Usually, you just do OpenLog item.log error, or I think it's now OpenLog util.log error. Oh no, it's still OpenLog item.log error. Yeah, it's also, if you're using the OpenNTF Domino API, the code's been incorporated into that as well. So there it's XSP OpenLog util.log error. It's no different at all from server-side JavaScript. It's just slightly different from the. It's a better practice method. I realized once I'd got further down into Java for doing it from there. So you either copy that Java package and into your application and copy across the faces config settings, or you use the update site, and then you've got it server-wide. Best practice is really to use the update site.
Right, then you don't need to add this to your faces config, because that's injected automatically through the update site plugin, right?
Exactly. The only thing that you need to do then is in the XSP properties, because you need to, in here, then tick the com.paulwithers.
To turn it on.
Yes, yeah. com.paulwithers.openlog.library.starterlibrary. You need to tick that because there aren't any components in the libraries. With the extension library, when you drag a component onto your X page, it hooks into that drag and drop event to actually automatically tick it here. But there aren't any components here, so I can't do that.
Yet I might have an idea for a component for you. Now there's also some property file settings that need to be set, right? That tells you the location of the database and maybe some other configuration things.
There are some configuration settings that you can set. By default, it's just going to log to openlog.nsf on the server.
In the root of the server, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. But you've got various settings that you can do. Quite a nice one, which came from a feature request, was expire date. If you set the expire date field on a notes document, then you can take advantage of inbuilt notes and Domino archiving. So you can set it to, say, 30 days, and then that document will expire, will have an expiry date set for 30 days from today. So that means that in the application properties, in the archive settings, ooh, that's an interesting one.
I've never seen this. I've never clicked on that button.
Neither had I. Until I was asked about it and asked for that feature and did some digging. So you create an archive configuration, set your selection criteria for documents with an expiration date older than X days. So it's setting an expiry date for 30 days in the future. You then want to expire or remove documents that have an expiration date older than 30 days. So you're basically saying keep it in the database for 60 days from today. Make sense?
Wow. I'll be looking at that.
Yep. And so that helps you just clean up OpenLog and stop it kind of getting over the top. And then you choose to just clean up this application without archiving. Give it a descriptive name and enable it, and then it's let's just select that.
This is the sound of me being shocked at this feature that I didn't even know existed, by the way.
I didn't, and I'd been working with Domino for probably more than 15 years, and
yeah, that's me too.
I wouldn't have known about it unless I'd put this OpenLog stuff up on OpenNTF, and someone had come with a feature request saying, can you add this in?
And that's the beauty of the community and sharing knowledge. Whenever you share, even if you're not an expert, if you don't know something, someone will help you.
Exactly, yeah. And if you put code up there, then you'll get asked for stuff that will teach you stuff. So then you just need to enable the archiving on your schedule. You tell it to schedule archiving every Sunday at 12 o'clock, for example, or whatever.
And for the US viewers, he said schedule. Try to make this as wide range a podcast as possible.
Yes, yeah. Sorry, I forgot that people over in America don't speak English.
That's right. That's right. We don't. We spell things differently also.
Yep, and then okay, and that's set up. So that's a very useful feature. But if you look on the home page of the demo database, all of those settings are detailed. And if you look in the XSP properties on the source tab, then I've got examples of all of them as well. So
cool.
You can see what you need to set.
Do you have now to view these errors? Is that still through the Notes client, or do you actually have like an XPages front end for that?
No, that's still through the Notes client.
But you would accept someone else's help to the project, wouldn't you?
I certainly would. Yes, yeah. If someone wants to add in an XPages front end onto it, then I'm perfectly happy for them to pick that up and run with it. Yep.
Great. So if you like this and you want to help, because that really is just viewing data, so that's really wouldn't even be that involved. in theory. So if you want to help, certainly reach out to Paul through OpenNTF or his blog, or his email address is available, and maybe that could be worked out.
Yeah, there are some additional options that are available, like setting up profiles, and you can actually add comments onto the logs in the Notes client.
Yeah, but that's again, that's
so,
getting fancy. But even just a viewer,
yeah.
I mean, it really would be a great addition to the XPages log reader project too. To pull in an OpenLog database from there, that would be a good bridge, because I use the XPages log reader all the time.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
either standalone or even in addition to that project might be a neat idea.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Definitely. Yep.
cool. All right. Well, I think that's going to conclude this debug and we have some thoughts on trying to do another little piece that I'm not ready to publish yet. But I hope to have him back on very soon.
Everything.
And with that being said, if you have any questions for me, here's my contact information, and I thank you for your time.